Hey everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we're going to be doing our brakes on our S54 swapped wagon. Now we're going to be doing all of the M3 parts. We're pulling over all the M3 rotors and calipers in the front because those have been done recently enough that they're in good condition and we'll be able to reuse those. In the back, these are looking a little neglected. So we bought some new rotors and a new set of pads. Also got a new brake sensor. The brake sensor that's on the M3 right now look to be in decent condition. So as long as I don't destroy that when I pull it apart, I can clean it up and I'll use it for another project, but we're gonna be putting the new one on this car. And then the other thing that we bought that you'll wanna make sure you buy, rotor screws. Now I will have the link to all this down in the description below. All this was all purchased from ECS Tuning. So sometimes sets don't come with rotor screws, so just make sure you check that before you get your brakes in and you find out later that you don't have all the parts. Most of the time, these screws come out without a problem. I would say probably about 1 out of every 8 of them get completely destroyed, and then you're having to drill them out and stuff like that because they just get really bad. And that's if they've been sitting there a long time. If these have been done 7 years ago or so, they're probably okay, but if these have been sitting on the car for 15 plus years, it can be a bit of a mess getting them out. The E46 death cart that we did last year, I had to drill and pull the rotor screw out of that. So just make sure that you get a set of these. So we're gonna be using some Techstar pads. This is, as it says here, an OE quality supplier. So this is basically just an OEM swap. Same thing with our Miley rotors that we bought. These rotors are just a replacement, nothing too fancy. The ones that are on here aren't completely ruined, but there's a bit of a lip, and I can tell that the brake pads in the back had about 30% life on them. They'd be okay for a while, but since we got it all apart, we're gonna be replacing those. So besides just doing the pads and rotors in the back of this car, the other thing we're gonna be doing in this video is I wanna show everybody how I've been pulling brakes and swapping brakes without having to do a full brake bleed. It's pretty simple. We'll go through that in just a second, but for right now, I wanna get that bracket off of there, get these new rotors up there, and see how lucky we are when it comes to those screws. All right, so this is the method I use to get the brake calipers off so you're not making a huge mess. This doesn't necessarily stop it from needing to be bled a little bit. Instead of like bleeding it a whole bunch, you'd only want to do it like once or just check it. So all I do is I take a rag, and this is to protect the brake line. So you put it over the brake line, and then I'll be taking these locking pliers, and then you basically just pinch the line, and that keeps it pressurized and everything like that, and then you're not having to deal with bleeding out a huge portion of your fluid. If you're looking to replace your fluid, then it's probably a good time to do so, but the fluid in this car looked okay, so I'm doing this mostly so I don't just make a mess on the lift for right now. And then you don't want to leave these on here for a super long time because it could potentially damage the line if you left them on here for too long. So we're going to clamp this, and then we'll go over to the M3 and grab the caliper off of that, and this will only be clamped for about 10 or 15 minutes. So this is the passenger side caliper on the M3. So this will replace the one we just pulled off of the wagon. Here's the sensor. It looked to be in decent condition. These are they're either working or they're not. There's no like in between really. So if I can pull this off without damaging it, I'll just kind of hold on to it and see if we need it somewhere else, but we're gonna be putting the new one on the wagon. So let's get this clamped, get this brake caliper off, and I wanna see them side by side and actually see if there's any differences in the rear. Size-wise, I don't really think there is. The front is really where that's gonna change. So here's the two brake calipers on the right. We've got the M3 on the left. We have the non-M. There are some different dimensions. So this clip section here in the front is different. The hole here is different for the brake pads. So I'm not surprised that they take different brakes. This section here is a little bit longer. I don't really think that this has much more clamping force, if any, but again, we're gonna move them over nevertheless. And then they also have, without spilling any fluid out the back, they've also got an M logo right here, which is pretty cool. So the wagon will have that all the way around, because I believe that's in the front as well. So I was editing this video and there was a couple things that I missed, so I apologize for that, but thank you for watching this far into the video. There are a couple things in the front here that I forgot to mention. If you're gonna be doing M3 brakes from an M3 over to a non-M car, there's you've got two options to get the calipers to fit. One, you can shave 6 or 7 millimeters off the caliper, and that's actually this bracket part right here. So on the M cars, this is thicker, and so if you want to machine that off, like I said, about 6 or 7 millimeters, that will allow the brake calipers from the M3 to fit the non-M car. If you have two cars sitting here side by side like I do, and like I've already got set up, you just pull the knuckles off the M3 and then put them onto your non-M car. This is why I've said in a previous video where we were doing the Brembo upgrade on my 330, if you want to go from the standard brakes on like a 323, 325 to an M3, you can actually get 330 brakes, because those are almost identical to these M3 brakes. If they're different, it's not by much. The width, I know the width is, the width of the rotor is only 3 millimeters wider, and the actual diameter of the rotor is the exact same. So if you don't want to machine and you can't get your hands on a set of knuckles, and I'm assuming new knuckles are probably pretty expensive, so if you can't get your hands on a used set, try looking for some 330 brakes. If you put some really nice pads and some nice performance rotors on the front and the back. So I thought I'd put this section in the video so that everybody's on the same page that these are not a direct fit. If you take M3 calipers, they will not fit on your non-M car. You're either gonna have to machine this or put on the knuckles. Both those items are not a huge deal, and if you have your hands already on a set of M brakes, it's probably worth it. If you don't, like I said, look for some 330 brakes or maybe a big brake kit for your non-M. And now, back to the video. So the brake swap is completely done. We were able to put M3 brakes and calipers on the rear end because the rear end is a complete M3 subframe. We swapped out the knuckles in the front, so now everything fits in the front. Very happy with the way everything turned out. Huge thanks to ECS Tuning for supplying all the parts. Please check out all the links to those in the description below. Also check out our Patreon link in the description below as well. We offer early ad-free access of our content. Also check out our Instagram link and our Snapchat linked in the description below as well. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to reply or answer any questions anybody has. That'll do it for today. We have a ton of content coming up on this wagon. We're getting pretty close to putting this engine in. Pretty excited about that. So stay tuned and we'll see everybody in the next video.